Welcome, everyone, to the Frosty Canucks podcast. I am your host, Jason, along with Steve.
Frugal Schmoogle.
Frugal Schmoogle.
Yes. That is, I think, the fastest you have ever replied back to whatever I say to start the podcast.
Probably. That wasn't as completely out of left field as normal, so.
Well, I mean, before we started recording, we've been talking for almost an hour, and then it was like, hey, we should probably start recording.
Otherwise, we're going to be here forever. So, in a world of shitty releases, two people will talk about them, starting with Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition.
Oh my god. Okay, hold on a second. So, I'm not a GTA guy on a good day, and I don't have any affinity for Rockstar's games because they're just
No, I know you've played it in my presence once before.
Have I really?
5. I think I had it on the PS3, but yeah, you were just like, why do you guys like this? I'm like, I don't know, I just bought it.
Yeah, well, it's like every time I play Grand Theft Auto, the same thing happens. I'd never owned the games myself, but everyone else does.
Everyone under the sun?
Yeah, so you go over to a friend's house, you sit down, they save before they hand you the controller because they don't want you to fuck up their save file too badly. And then the same thing happens every single time. I run around for a bit, I kill some people, I steal a car, I blow up the police a bunch. Eventually I die and I go, well, I'm bored now. Because that's the entire,
That's the loop.
Yeah, and I just don't find it that fun. And the thing that always kind of got me is the more I've learned about their games, the more confused I am by them because they usually design the cities to be, or I guess the worlds to be really open and have kind of systemic driven stuff in them. But then the stories are always these really heavily scripted
moments and stuff like that, and set pieces.
Yeah, it was still, they don't let you veer off the path at all, so that feels like it's diametrically opposed, right? If you're gonna have this open sandbox, why Nakey Jakey, I think is the name of the YouTuber, he describes it as a set of Legos. The story is when you have a Lego set and it has instructions about how you're supposed to build it, but then the world is a bin of Legos that you can just build whatever you want with. And those two things, if you try and play with the bin of Legos when you're in the story, then you get slapped on the wrist. You gotta make your Lego set when you're playing the story. No, I always thought that was
Mission
weird.
Failed. I hear what you're saying, yeah.
But anyway, you wanted to bring up the disaster that is the remastered trilogy?
Yeah, so it's got San Andreas, 3, and then Vice City, and all of these are apparently mobile AI improved ports.
What a human didn't even work on them?
Based off of how many fucking bugs were in that, no, I don't believe any humans were looking at that fucking release. It's terrifying what they've done, and
I kind of don't really know what they looked like beforehand, but the rain looked like ass. That's the one thing I've seen.
Milk rain. Anyone got cereal?
Yeah. One of the other funnier videos I saw on Twitter was one where every time you shimmy the car back and forth, it just gets a little bit bigger. I thought that was pretty funny.
It's
but
that Putin gets a wider meme, but left the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
generally speaking, these are complete dog shit ports.
There's no...
astonishingly bad.
People are like, Cyberpunk came in a really bad state. I'm like, I don't know. This might top it.
Yeah, but Cyberpunk was at least a new game, where this is a remastered thing.
Definitive experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if I talked too much about definitive editions on the podcast before, but I'm not necessarily a fan of them. At least on PC, they took down the original version of GTA 3 anymore. It's gone. You can only buy this remastered shit show.
That was before. They have apologized and then reinstated the PC ones, apparently.
Oh, okay. That's good.
They have gone back on that. I don't know if that means they've done the same for the consoles. So that would be...
So they were available
on PS4 and Xbox One. They were available, and then they took them down from those stores.
I'm kind of surprised that why even do this if you could just buy and play them on the things already. I mean, obviously they're not improved at all, but neither was this. So
in retrospect, yeah. It's funny because I've seen some people say online being like, yeah, this actually explains why there was no gameplay trailer parts in the trailer. It was very cinematic, and usually Rockstar is they would kind of go into a mission at the very least and see the gameplay.
So you think that they were
aware
being
of
very
this.
deliberate? That's what it's getting at.
There's no way. The sheer number of bugs.
Well, that and the frequency with which you can find them too, right?
Yeah.
So this is just fucking shit out the door. I saw somebody took like a 2K thing where I think they were shitting on CDPR for the state of Cyberpunk's release. Or maybe it was Activision for one of the Call of Duties or something.
Would surprise me at any of these.
Yeah, but it was some company in Take-Two's Twitter account was kind of, raking them over the coals. And I'm like, man, and people were like, oh, this didn't age that well because of the way that the Grand Theft Auto trilogy remastered, definitive, whatever the fuck came out. But even before that happened, like the BioShock remasters, Jesus fucking Christ. I can't even play BioShock remastered on my machine.
Oh, really?
It just doesn't work. I mean, I haven't gone back to try it again, but like when I tried to play it a couple months after it launched, it just doesn't work. I fucking have to just install the original ass game and play that instead, which the original game runs fine. It already ran at like 60 FPS, so,
No reason to improve there.
Oh, and then I guess just as a side tangent, BioShock Infinite can only run that game at 120 FPS at launch on PC when it launched in like 2013. That game didn't even get remastered, but like, yeah, the original BioShock, the remaster for that, like it had like this crap ass mouse acceleration. The camera was constantly stuttering. There was like vertical syncing issues that I couldn't fix because that option didn't exist in the fucking settings menu for some reason. There was like texture pop-in. There was just things that weren't rendering properly. So there was like these fucking like just dead squares, which is something I have never seen in any other game I've played before. Just complete fucking disaster. So it's like 2K never ever had a foot to stand on or a leg to stand on with regard to giving someone else shit for having a bad game release, because holy fuck, every single remastered thing they've done has been fucking disastrous.
As far as I'm concerned, it's just a quick buck.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100% what this is.
I just don't understand, did they think that people weren't going to notice this?
I didn't care.
Yeah.
I feel like we live in an age presently where between social media, we live in a society. Just fucking Blair Potemkin's theme from Guilty Gear. So we have social media, we have user reviews and stuff on Steam or whatever, Metacritic. So it's very easy now to point out when a shit game exists. And I feel like, and some people might get mad at me for saying this, but I feel like the overwhelming majority of shit games disappeared. Like shovelware kind of shit games, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like all the ones on the Wii and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. The kind of shit you'd buy for like $10 from a Walmart discount bin, right? And now these terrible slapdash remasters are the shovelware of the game industry. Just put it out. It's like, it doesn't matter how quality it is. People, like, we just got to get as much money from this as we can before people realize, we'll just say we're sorry and then everyone will forget about it 6 months from now. It won't matter.
6 months from now, it'll be like 2 months.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean, right? So
you're giving people's attention spans a little bit too much credit.
Well, it's not attention span, it's just their memory. They'll just fucking forget. Everyone's a goddamn goldfish.
That's what I mean.
I feel like this has become the new way to shovel out shit to the industry. Oh, we have this thing that we've already made a shit, like, they put it out apparently they put it out on the consoles as well as PC.
And Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, so they already made a bunch of money on it. So it's like, let's just put out our remastered version where we do almost nothing to it and then just, it'll be garbage. But people will pay money for it, and as soon as they find out, well, there's no refunds on all of those except for Steam, so we're fine.
So the solution is we need refund policies on every system.
So I know that Nico, shoutouts to Nico, will disagree with me on this maybe because he has this idea in his head that the PC gaming is just a total fucking gong show all the time. But ever since the refund policy was implemented, the quality of PC ports has gone up. You do not see as many games come out with problems, because if they have problems, like, the fucking developer gets annihilated.
Battlefield 2042.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. The sale is through Steam, but I don't know how that works with Origin as well. But to their credit, EA's actually got one of the best refund policies in the entire industry. I know that's something else that people will be really surprised to hear, but if you buy a digital game from EA, you can call into the support line, and if you have like trouble running the game, or if you just want to like refund the game just because, they'll usually give you your money back.
I mean, they've gone more with like services now, EA Play and shit like that.
Yeah, exactly. So they fundamentally don't have a huge problem with refunding people on their purchases. It's kind of like the Costco.
Yeah.
The whole reason that Costco offers such a comprehensive refund policy is because most people aren't going to use that refund policy, but having a refund policy means that people will spend more money because they know they can refund it if they don't like the product.
Yeah, they're very lax on that.
Yeah, well, that seems to be the approach that EA's taken because, like, they surprisingly don't seem to give a fuck why you want to return a game. If you say you want to return a game and you spent the time to call in to ask to return it, they usually refund you based on stuff I've read online. Whereas, like, Ubisoft, as soon as the game downloads, like, the first kilobyte of data, they're like, oh, you can't refund it anymore. So, fuck, there was something on Steam, GTA 5, there was a version where you got, like, 5 million in-game credits or some shit.
Like one of those,
and as soon as you bought it, you couldn't refund it because the Shark Pack took effect immediately. They circumvented the refund policy. And Valve, I think, actually had some issues with that. Because they're like, that's not okay. You just broke our refund policy. Like, that's, we don't like that. This is a thing back in, like, fucking Lord knows, like 2016, 2017. I don't think I could even find the news article for it anymore.
It's just, we've had so many bad releases as of late, or at least ones that are financially disappointing, like the Call of Duty Vanguard one. All the AAA companies are just like, shitting themselves as of late.
I feel like maybe part of that comes from the fact that this is an entire industry that has built itself up on peer pressure and crunch, and that's a lot harder to do when people are working remotely. Crunch is obviously the way that you get people to work for longer on something, which is how you deal with more issues in the same amount of time. But when you have an office full of people who are, actively engaged in crunching, then they'll peer pressure each other into continuing into that status quo, right? I think I've actually said this before in my own office where there's like a bunch of rock star people who would stay late for stuff, and I'm like, fuck this. And I just, like, as soon as my day's done, I just pack up and leave. Am I ever considered for the big bonuses at the end of the year? No. Do I care? No. I like having my fucking time.
But time equals money.
And to be fair, every single one of those rockstar people fucking left our team anyway, so.
From burnout?
I have a feeling they got bored with the work, or they didn't feel like they were being compensated well enough for the work that they were doing.
That dilemma.
Yeah, well, it's like when you just fucking, do your 8 hours and then leave, you don't tend to feel like you're not being compensated fairly, right? So, but if you work for like 10 hours a day, then yeah, I would imagine that you're only getting paid for 8 of them, then eventually you're gonna get pissed off.
Indeed.
But yeah, I guess having mentioned Call of Duty, do we want to go into that next?
Yeah.
Or is there some other shit show you wanted to talk about?
No, that's all I really want to talk about. Battlefield 2042. It's just funny how many issues there are with that game on release. The bullet spread is hilarious in my opinion. Like, can you imagine shooting at an enemy like point blank range and just being like, all right, the bullet went that way. All right, now it zoomed that way.
I think the thing that's really damning for this game is obviously they had to ship it in November because it's like that's when Battlefield comes out, right? Battlefield and Call of Duty come out in November every year. So it's like an unmovable date. It has to launch. I think they delayed it by a couple of weeks. And, it's going to be more polished that way. That's like a huge red flag. If a fucking game with like a theoretically like an unmovable release date has to move back like a couple of weeks, it's like, oh god, this game's gonna be a total fucking shit show.
A couple weeks is never enough time to resolve all the issues.
Holy shit. Like, a couple of weeks for the software that I work on can sometimes be like a make or break thing so that the software actually comes out and it's functional. For a fucking video game where there's like way more systems in play, holy fuck, there's no way.
You gotta have an Avengers level team on your hand to fix all the issues. We hired all the professionals.
Well, and like the big thing is, like I don't even have to do a physical release for my stuff, right? So like it's gold code like a week before it goes out the door for me. These people have to get this shit printed on discs. I think that means they have like a 2 or 3 week run up to their launch. And then it's like day one patches.
It helps that, the day one patches, I was going to say. That helps now a little bit with the mitigating those issues.
Still. Like, I cannot even imagine working at one of these companies. Like, it'd just be so depressing. Like, you spend all this time working on this thing, there's no way you can hit your due date. But that's your due date. And you just like, fuck it, this is all we can get done. There's nothing more we can do.
We got the game in a 40% complete state. Good enough.
You can't say no because then some fucking suit wearing, slick-haired, white motherfucker is going to come in and he's going to yell at you until his face looks like a tomato. And that's what your day is going to be. Listening to this dickhead scream at you for 8 hours, 9 hours.
Listen here, video game programming doesn't take a lot of effort.
Yeah,
what do
this
you
fucking...
mean there's bugs? Just don't report them.
This semen stain fucking human being is going to sit and yell at you about how your job is not as hard as it actually is because they're a business person and they have never touched any piece of technology in their life in a way that didn't involve making them more money. But yeah, so Battlefield 20... I know I'm not wrong. I fucking work with these dick weasels, man. Like, fucking... I always work for the bad guy. I know who these fucking dickheads are. I work for them. I'm under less scrutiny than the fucking game people are because I'm in an industry that doesn't make as much... Well, it makes money, it's just not in the same way. So yeah, Battlefield 2042, it's just a fucking shit show. Which was good news for Call of Duty, which is our next topic, kind of. So, Call of Duty...
Vanguard.
God, Vanguard? Thank you. Call of Duty Vanguard launched this year. In November.
Month.
Shut up. It launched in November a couple of weeks ago. Battlefield just launched this past week, I think, the week of recording in, the final week of November.
Yeah, it's because people had access to it early because of the services that EA's got. Or you buy the special duper awesome edition, you get 4 days extra.
You get it 3 days early.
Some crap like that.
Oh, that's
how people found out about
stupid.
this, and it's like, wait, this is maybe 20% of the people that are going to buy this game, and everything. The game's having this many issues, server issues. Jesus Christ, I don't want to see what full release version is.
So both of those games launched. Vanguard is down sales-wise. Call of Duty still is one of the best-selling games of the year. I don't know if it's the best-selling game of the year. I think it might have actually gotten beat out by like FIFA. It certainly did in the UK, which is the only place where we have firm numbers. So an article on GameIndustry.biz, which I will link in the post if you want to go and read it, or you can just Google search it up yourself. It's from this week, and it shows that the boxed sales in the UK, based on the UK game charts, shows that FIFA was the best release of the year. Call of Duty was the second best release of the year. But this week, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl coming out actually bumped Call of Duty down to the third spot. So Pokemon beat out Call of Duty. That's
impressive.
Yes, but that speaks to the declining interest in Call of Duty in general. Now, there are a few factors that I think are important that people haven't necessarily been as forthcoming with bringing up, and I'm not going to be one of those fucking dick weasels, so I'm going to say it.
Yeah, you were mentioning that this is World War II, and World War II games sell like crap every time. Cause it's
not like crap, but like if you look
in comparison.
If you look at the Call of Duty sales numbers from the last 2 decades of sales, there's a very clear pattern of the modern shooters, so like Modern Warfare and Ghost, doing, or maybe not Ghost, Black Ops is the one I was thinking of. So like Black Ops and Modern Warfare, like the modern shooters tend to sell much better relatively than the World War II shooters. So anytime they've done World War II, the sales tend to dip down a little bit, and then whenever they do a modern shooter, then it spikes back up again. The difference you're looking at is for the modern shooters, they might be selling toward the 28 to 30 million mark, which is very, 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 very big. That is a very successful game. And then for the World War II ones, you might be dropping down to like between 15 and 20 million. Again, extremely successful game, just bad by Call of Duty metrics, which don't apply to they only apply to very few other members in the industry.
If Grand Theft Auto had that decline, they'd be like shitting their pants.
Yeah, well, like Call of Duty releases a new game every year. So if you have a drop off for 1 year, okay, not a big deal, right? Like, it's when there's a trend. And there was a couple of years in a row where they were doing World War II style shooters, and you did see a bit of a consistent, lower numbers. But then when they did Modern Warfare Remastered, Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, or I forget, it's something like that, that spiked back up again to the 30 million-ish mark. That's typically how Call of Duty games sell. Vanguard is a World War II style Call of Duty, so naturally, based on the data that we already have, you can assume that the numbers are going to be down, especially because the last Call of Duty that came out was a modern shooter. there's already going to be some kind of decline from just people who don't seem to be as interested in one Call of Duty as a World War II style shooter. So there are some people who are already, doom speaking, oh, Call of Duty, this is the big decline or whatever. But I feel like these sorts of articles come out every single time. They go from a modern one to a World War II one, and then you see like, oh yeah, there's like a 40-50% initial sales drop or whatever the fuck. But the reason why I'm saying all of this is because I wanted to ask the question, is the modern multiplayer shooter costing $60 dying? This year we saw Vanguard launch to, I would say, middling reception, and they didn't come back saying that the sales for the first week were impressive, which means that they were either like middling or bad.
We don't get to hear bad press.
No, you only hear good press. And everyone loves waving their dick around. It's video game industry loves wiggling. They're doing a helicopter with dick wiggling all over the place whenever they do well.
5 mils copies! Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then Battlefield. It's not been out for a week yet at the time of recording, so it's really hard to say anything about its sales, but on Steam this game is getting absolutely obliterated in the user reviews.
The critical reception is significantly lower than usual.
Yeah, I could see that. And then this all happens following Halo Infinite launching its multiplayer for free. That was extremely well received by fans and critics. So, like, that's a series that up until this point
was on ice.
I was just saying, like, it was a $60 game.
Oh, yeah.
$60 American, anyway. And now Microsoft has pivoted towards free-to-play, which I thought was a really smart move. I guess it's also worth calling out that, as much as people don't like it, Fortnite, for all intents and purposes, is a shooter. And then people like to classify battle royales like they're this new fucking thing, but they're free-for-all shooters. I don't even think it's that different. It's like a free-for-all shootout in a multiplayer shooter, so you die.
One life mode.
Yeah, you only get one life.
Yeah.
When people were calling it like a new genre back as far as like 2016, I'm like, what the fuck are you people smoking?
PUBG being like, we own Battle Royale. What?
Oh my god. Brandon Green's a fucking dumbass.
Such a simple concept. Yeah, I own this now.
Yeah, this concept that you ripped off, like, it was already just like a slight alteration on an existing game mode. Yeah, I'm sure you do own this concept, Jesus Christ. And the name that you clearly stripped from a movie that has a very similar style. Okay, yeah, sure, you definitely invented this.
No, they copied us. They copied us. That's how it works.
Anyway, Fortnite, very big, free-to-play shooter. Destiny started as a paid multiplayer game, and I believe Destiny 2 is like quasi-MMO style. I know man's gonna get fucking tilted at me saying that, but like, it's free to play now, right? Call of Duty Vanguard is free to play. Or not Vanguard. Vanguard's not the right name. What's the fucking... Thank you. Warzone is free to play, and it's doing really well, even still. EA even has a free... Like, EA's only free-to-play title that's not mobile trash. Apex Legends. Another free-to-play shooting game. Over the last 5-6 years, we've seen a number of really popular, really high-quality shooting games, like multiplayer shooting games, that are all free-to-play. Is this the beginning of the end? Are people still going to come out in droves for Call of Duty and Battlefield charging the full premium price tag when there's these really high quality free titles that they can play instead?
I mean, definitely with Halo launching, that was a very smart move from Microsoft to do that. What was it, for their 20th anniversary? That's what they did this for?
Well, I mean, they were planning to have it be free regardless, but I think they launched it alongside that. Yeah.
So, I mean, makes a lot of sense. It came out very polished, very good. I think there maybe were a little bit of server issue from what I've seen from the gameplay that I watched occasionally, but other than that, not a whole lot of complaints, and you didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah, I feel like that's the biggest
you
fucking
had to
win
pay
for Halo.
For a shitty Battlefield game, and from what I was told or read online, the zombies mode of Call of Duty was kind of lackluster, and then the multiplayer was the same as before. So okay, then just play one of the older Call of Duty games, or play the Warzone that's gonna get updated regularly with new content. It doesn't make sense to waste your money in that regard.
Yeah, I actually somewhat question the idea of, I mean, like, obviously if you have people buy Call of Duty like it's a religion, right? So you're not going to stop making Call of Duty games while people are just going to hand you money for them. I thought it was very strange to kind of release new Call of Duty when I figure that Warzone is the big product that they should be throwing most of their weight behind. I don't know if the numbers are there to actually support that, but I got to imagine that, like, I don't know. When I looked online, I couldn't find anything definitive about the player counts, but from what I saw, most of the time they were doing relatively well. I don't know if they're making as much money as they could out of it, which might be the big issue. It's easier to make money when you have an annual release that people will pay top cheddar for, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, I mean, like, I don't necessarily think that you're going to see these $60 or $70, whatever the fuck, like the premium shooters go anywhere. But I do think that there has been enough of a shift in the industry, or at least the consumer side of the industry, where there are definitely some people who are not willing to accept that kind of shit anymore. And they'd rather just pick up and play a free title, especially because there is a lot of high quality free titles for this particular genre. Especially when Call of Duty and Battlefield are... People might give me some shit for this, but like I feel like Call of Duty hasn't really innovated a whole lot in the last number of years. And it's one of those things where it's like you don't want to innovate too much, otherwise you'll piss off the established base. Pokemon runs into that all the time. Anytime they try and do anything kind of new, people are like, "Rah," but then they don't do enough new stuff and people are like, "Rah."
You gotta find that weird balance, yeah.
Obviously, we can't say with any degree of certainty if this is going to be like kind of the start of a decline in premium shooters.
It also helps with the fact that digital sales are becoming more commonplace.
Yes,
so
I feel like
that,
as people become more accustomed to buying things digitally, then the idea of playing a free-to-play game becomes a lot less scary. Right? I feel like people, when it's like, oh, it's digital only, I don't want to touch it, more and more people are like, okay, like, there are people who are like that. Don't laugh.
I laugh in agreement.
Yeah, well, it's like when people get more used to that, you know, before I bought a digital game, I'm like, ooh, digital games, that's kind of like, that seems a bit sus, but then you play like your first indie game, and you're like, is there other stuff that's like $10 and also really fun? I'm all about that $10 and really fun market. Let's get some more of those.
That's in my budget.
Yeah, well, then eventually you're buying all of your games digitally on PC. Not that I have a choice, but obviously this year's sales for Call of Duty and Battlefield are probably going to be weaker relative to their previous years, based on the negative critical and commercial reception that they've had so far. However, it'll be interesting to see if this ends up being a long-term trend at all, and if free-to-play games end up dominating the industry. The big thing to also remember is that like free-to-play games tend to do better in like not affluent countries. This is not incorrect. Like most of our listener base is in North America or Europe, right?
This is correct.
Okay, yeah, so we're all from relatively rich countries. In poorer countries where the spending power of the individual is much lower, free-to-play is a much, much, much more enticing game model. I think given that some of the growth markets are not necessarily in places that are as affluent as North America or Europe, might also factor into that. You might see more companies offer free-to-play just out the gate anyway because they're like, well, this is the only way to kind of cater to certain audiences. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if 10 years from now, if Call of Duty is just like a fucking free-to-play game. Just has like a new battle pass every 2 months or whatever. And like a new campaign every year that you can optionally buy or something.
Well, it seems to be what Ubisoft wants to do with that Assassin's Creed live service game.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, I think Assassin's Creed makes like, people were like, oh, it'll be so bad if it's a live service game. And I'm like, no, it'll be exactly the same way it is right now. It's just that every year you pay.
But
yeah, you just pay for your updated campaign every single fucking October or November. And then you play through the same recycled bullshit missions, and occasionally throughout the year, they'll probably put out like mini updates where you can pop in and do some more of the same copy-pasted bullshit. Yes. I have a very low opinion of this entire franchise. I like just Ubisoft in general, but...
I was gonna say.
I can't help it. I fucking hate them for being shit. I think it'll be very interesting to watch and see what the landscape looks like and who the big players are. I have to assume that Battlefield and Call of Duty will remain big players. It's just that I'm curious if they'll ever pivot into free-to-play like Microsoft has with Halo.
I think the first person who will do that would be Battlefield.
I don't think so because EA fucking hates free-to-play games. They have put out a couple of different games that probably should have launched free to play, and they didn't.
Oh, like the dodgeball one you were saying?
Yeah, Knockout City and Rocket Arena. So Knockout City came out earlier this year. It's dodgeball style multiplayer 3v3 game, and Rocket Arena was something. It was like I think it was a 3v3 or 4v4 arena shooters type thing.
Yeah.
And Rocket Arena, in fact, originally was planning to be free to play, and then when they got picked up as an EA original, then it suddenly became a $30 game. And the developers were like, well, I know we said we wanted to make it free to play and like all this other stuff. And it's like, it was the kind of PR speak that you can, whenever you read it, you feel like there's like a anime style, like the person's delivering it and they're like sweating and it like shows the slow pan up and there's like the dark figure behind them. And it's like the EA business suit guy is the dark figure behind them. As they're reading their piece of paper that they were handed by the dark figure.
Please don't kill my family.
Well, it's like one of those things where when a company comes by and they pick up your game to publish it and they're going to dump a bunch of money into advertising for it and stuff. Yeah, it's like you can't just come out and be like, well, I wanted to do it, but then EA was like, you got to charge money for it. It's like, no, that's not. You don't shit on your publisher, man. Like, that's not a thing you do.
Yeah, you do that if there's a licensing issue. That's...
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so like, I don't know how Respawn convinced EA to let them put out Apex as a free-to-play game, but that is the only premium game they have that is free-to-play. All their other free-to-play titles are just like mobile trash. You know exactly what I'm talking about when I say mobile trash. Like, they're just fucking garbage. But Apex Legends is like the one premium title that does not cost $1. Like, does not cost a dime. So, honestly, I think Activision, because it's Activision Blizzard.
Yes.
So they actually have a handful of premium free-to-play titles already. So, but then the Battle Royale that was in Battlefield was like a future update. I don't think it was free-to-play in the same year that Warzone came out, right?
What, like Call of
I don't
Duty
know what
Black Ops 4?
No. The same year that Warzone launched,
I
Battlefield had a Battle Royale mode, but it was like, I don't think it was free to play like Warzone is. I think you had to like own somebody out there, probably Naz already knows this shit, and I should have looked this up ahead of time, and he's going to give me shit about it for it later. Battlefield 5 Firestorm. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that came out significantly later.
Yeah, and that was part of Battlefield 5. It wasn't like free like Warzone is.
Correct.
Well, it might have been a free update if you already owned the game, but like that's just it. So it's like, I'm just saying, like, I'm making a case if any of these games, like, I would put my bets on Activision doing something free to play before EA, because EA is just like, they're fucking allergic to the idea of doing anything free to play unless it's like a mobile game, where Activision actually has taken some steps towards launching premium games that are free to play, because that, okay, we'll eat the cost up front, but we'll make it in the back on microtransactions and battle passes and all sorts of other shit. They understand that you don't need to if you just keep the door open, people will come in and spend money. You don't need to lock the fucking door before people can even come in, right? I'd hazard a guess that if either of them is going to pivot more towards that kind of a model, I'd be more surprised if EA did it first, but I don't know. We'll see. Do we want to talk about the Game Awards at all before we go for break?
I don't know. Not really.
No? You don't want to talk about the Game Awards at all?
It's so, like, middle. We can talk about it next week.
I mean, next week we'll be recording on the same day as
the Game
Awards is happening. I guess not next week, but like next episode. Our recording day is the 9th, and I'm pretty sure that's when the Game Awards happen, so we might actually be recording.
I think we were recording last time, too.
I'm pretty sure you're right on that. I vaguely remember that being the case.
It's a curse for about a year, or a few years.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It just happens to sync up that way, but my opinion still hasn't changed. Just to kind of briefly mention it like that, it's hard to take an award show seriously when half of the stage time or more is dedicated towards advertisements, both for the things that are supposedly being celebrated and for things that are completely unrelated. If you go to the Game Awards website,
Gillette Fusion.
I don't think it was Gillette. It was like I don't even know what the brand of the shaver was. It obviously wasn't a very good advertisement. I think if you look at a few all categories.
Oh, like some are sponsored.
Yeah, and this year I believe has the most sponsored categories out of all of them compared to the previous years. I want to say there's 4 sponsored categories this year, and last year I think there was only 3.
Well, that's the rise in the popularity of this.
Yeah, but it's just like I don't know. I find it really difficult to take any of this shit seriously or just video games in general seriously as an artistic medium when fucking the big award show for games is this advertisement laden fucking shit show that focuses more on trying to sell products to people than it does on actually celebrating or acknowledging the medium in which it's supposed to be about. Especially like last year, I think most like what was like half the awards were just like announced, like, oh hey, so and so won this and this, oh yeah, and then they like, oh, let's go back to like the trailers for new products and fucking showing off cars or shaving equipment.
Yes, they did like extra awards before or during breaks or during like, you watch this trailer and all of a sudden, yeah, and this award goes to this person. Like,
yeah, it's
no build up, no nothing.
And I know that some people are like, one of the last things I said on Twitter before I just fucking fucked off from Twitter for just to not be on Twitter is that like some people were upset that Forza wasn't nominated for Game of the Year or whatever. And they're like, oh, the Game Awards has lost so much credibility. And I'm like, man, what fucking... Like, I know I said my piece about, like, I don't think a racing game would ever be nominated on the basis of it being a racing game. But, like, what the fuck show did you watch that ever had any credibility, man? Like, what the fuck? The person who said that, like, exact tweet listens to this podcast, don't feel like that's a particular call out to you. There are a bunch of other people who are saying the same sorts of things. I know we follow each other mutually on Twitter. Like, actually, I was kind of confused about that because I'm like, man, like, for years I thought this show was bullshit. I can't, maybe it's because I'm not the most empathetic person, but I just can't envision how anyone would take this shit show seriously.
I just watch the trailers afterwards for what I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's just it. It's like E3, right? Like, I don't even like watching E3 live. You just watch, like, you read about it, and then maybe like, oh, this game sounds interesting, and then you watch a trailer for it afterwards, right?
Yep. Now that we've gone through so many terrible, terrible games, let's talk about some games we played that are maybe not so terrible.
Well, from my end, definitely not, but I don't know about your end.
No, I like the games I played, so...
Oh yeah, I just looked at what the other title was. I knew that the one was there, but I looked at what the other one is, and yeah, that's not gonna. We're gonna be talking about good games.
For once.
Yeah, I have 3 kind of. So do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Get the Gear Strive, baby.
It's back again.
Yeah. So with Stardew, I finally hit a point where I was starting to get bored of it, which is hilarious because I finally hit the new content, like the actual like new content.
Of course.
I don't know. It's just like I spent like 40 or 50 hours playing. Actually, probably close to 60 hours playing it over like the last several weeks. So it's like a lot of time.
I understand. Yeah.
You know, I was like, I want to play Guilty Gear again. So it'd been like 3 weeks since I really played it. So like I played a little bit after the last like big patch. People actually know the changes now, and oh my god, Dolphin got nerfed so hard. People actually know that they can just use their neutral punch to stuff it now, and you cannot approach with that move like at all anymore.
Your bestie got nerfed.
Well, yeah, so like her best button got nerfed, but the upside to that is that like now you really need to know what all of your other buttons do, and it's forced me to figure out how to use that move in a less just straightforward oppressive way. So now I really make people's souls cry because I have to bamboozle them even harder with it. Most of the time I'm using the Dolphin as just like a combo extender or like a special, like sometimes I'll use it as a special move to end out normal strings, but other times I won't, just to fuck with people so that they'll think, oh, a Dolphin's coming, and then they'll throw out like a neutral punch and I'll do something that's not a neutral punch and catch them, and then I'm like, ooh, I can combo you now.
So a good old fake out.
Yeah, basically. I saw somebody on a YouTube video for a guy who makes May Strive guides on YouTube, Yomi FGC. I'll probably link that if anyone is curious. I think his videos are really well put together. They're always short and to the point, and they just cover like whatever this is in the title instead of being padded out because of YouTube money. But yeah, someone put it very succinctly when they said like May is a real character now because she can't just meme her way to victory with Dolphin anymore. So I was using like some of her moveset, but now I really have to use like all of her moveset. But that has forced me to learn like a bunch of things with dashes. Like I didn't know that this was a thing before, but apparently it was a really common and easy thing to do. you can map an instant dash as a button instead of having to do the command input of like pressing forward twice or backwards twice. I think that it should just be mapped by default because there's some characters that can do combos when they use the dash button instead of the command input. Case in point, you can use Dolphin and then just continue holding back, use the back dash with the button, and then immediately fire out of the dash into another Dolphin. That's literally impossible if you do the command input because you haven't been holding back long enough by doing the 2 backward motions because there's a break in between them. But if you're just holding back the entire time, you press the button, May does a hop, like a little hopscotch backwards. If they try and do anything, then you immediately fire a Dolphin and catch them. That's just fucking soul crushing. I just feel people's life force leave their body as that happens.
Smiling.
Yeah, that's a fun thing to do. There's also a couple of other aerial-based shenanigans that you can do now, which has been really fun. And there's like a few other things that I hadn't bothered to learn how to do, but now that Dolphin's not just like super oppressive, I'm like, oh, I should learn how to do like these things now. Which has involved, again, like learning more with like jump canceling or dash canceling. For example, thing that in fighting games is called a tick throw. So this is when you do an attack that leaves you plus enough. Oh god, that doesn't mean anything to most of you. So when you attack in fighting games, there is a recovery animation associated with every attack. When you're plus, that means that you recover before your opponent comes out of block stun. Most moves are not plus, because if they're plus, they let you continue to press your advantage. So most of the time moves are usually like negative on block, so like your opponent recovers before you do. But every character has a few moves that are plus on block. So a tick throw is when you use an attack that is plus on block, and then you use that time that you have advantage to set up a throw. So as soon as your opponent can be thrown, you throw them. It ends up being so fast that it's not reactable. The only way you can respond to a tick throw is if you know that what your opponent is doing is a move that is plus, and they might be setting up a tick throw. So that they're setting up a tick throw, and then you do the appropriate response for it. May has a few of those. Well, she has one of those, and I was like, how do I do the tick throw in this game? Because I use tick throws in Phantasy Strike quite a bit. I like doing tick throws. They're really fucking annoying, and people really hate them. People hate throws in general. Tick throws are even more irritating because you have to like go from being blocking to doing something like whatever the response is to a throw. In Guilty Gear's case, it means you have to jump, which is committal. And, the person could just as easily use that as a frame trap and not throw you. But yeah, one of the interesting things with tick throws in Guilty Gear, or at least with May's close slash, which is like the only move she has that's plus on block, you can't just press the close slash and then immediately go into the throw, which is what I'm used to doing. You actually have to dash cancel the attack because it pushes her back far enough that a throw it'll just whiff. So it won't even connect. So you have to use close slash, which is already plus on block, dash cancel it, so it's even more plus on block because you cancel out of your recovery when you dash cancel. And then you'll be right in their face, and then that's when you go for either throw or you do something else, depending on if you think your opponent will actually respond to the throw or not respond to the throw. That's something I've been trying to teach my hands to do because I have not really been using dash or jump cancels to any whole lot, even though I should have been. But it's just the way that the game was designed originally. You could get away, or at least with some characters, you could get away with not having to learn these concepts. But the recent patch made it so that they're a lot more emphasized, which I think is a really good thing. That and it's like eventually I would have learned it anyway. It's like slowly chunking through like, okay, I learned this thing and now I'm going to learn this thing and now I'm going to learn this thing. It's just kind of weird coming from a game where it's like, oh yeah, I just press a button and I press the throw button. It's like, okay, no, I got to press the button and then I got to press the dash cancel. I got to like press the button and then press the dash button and then I press the throw button. So there's like one extra step in there that I'm like, oh yeah, I got to remember to actually use a dash cancel. Otherwise this doesn't fucking work.
I must think 12 moves ahead.
You kind of do that in fighting games just in general, but that's part of where the practice comes from because if you got to think about what you're doing, then it's going to slow you down a little bit. So if you just practiced it enough, then you'll just like, I want to do this. And then you'll do, oh yes, this, then this, then this. And then you just do it instead of having to think about it. Kind of like whenever I hit a dust combo off on somebody and they have no burst, I know exactly what the button combination is for that. And I don't have to think about it. I just, bop, 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 bop. I just do it. That's just a practice thing. So I didn't want this to be super long. I'm pretty sure that was under 5 minutes. I'm going to cap it there. I've been learning dash cancels and jump cancels. I can feel my opponent's souls leaving their body even more aggressively than before because I'm doing even more ridiculous shit to them by necessity. That's fun. I like making my opponents salty as fuck, so.
Excellent.
That was really good, and yes, that is exactly what it's like. This evil-ass Mr. Burns shit.
Do you want me to do Stardew now before you get into your first game, or?
Sure.
Okay.
The mini updates.
Yeah, I'll just do the back-to-back here. Yeah, Stardew Valley, I actually finished year 2. I got all 4 candles in the Grandpa evaluation. Based on the wiki, I had 19 of the available 21 points. The only ones I was missing was I didn't have the museum completed. I didn't catch all the fish, which is substantially harder to do now in version 1.5 than it was back when the game first came out.
Yeah, there's more
Because there's more shit, yeah.
So much more shit.
Well, for the museum, not necessarily, but for the fish, definitely.
Well, that'd be the new stuff on the new island, I'd assume.
Yeah, there's a few new fish on the new island. There's no, like, new museum things to get on the island, though. You can still finish the museum. I think I only am missing, like, one thing in the museum at this point. So I was close, but... So I've finished all of what was, like, in the game that I had already seen before. And I have gotten some new things that were not in the game. I don't think hammers were a weapon in the game when I was playing. But when I got, like, I think it's called like the Galaxy Sword. The defense guy who runs the guild, he starts selling like a Galaxy Dagger and a Galaxy Hammer. And I like the hammer because it has 2 useful attacks instead of 1 useful attack and 1 dog shit attack. Well, I guess it's not even an attack, right? Like when you right, or it's left click and right click on the mouse, but so when you like right click with the mouse, it just blocks with the sword instead of doing like anything useful. And blocking is just fucking worthless in Stardew.
Yep.
So that's entirely because like blocking doesn't push the enemy back at all, so they just stand on top of you. So as soon as the block ends, you just start taking damage. So it's like, why would you ever block?
Hopefully that's something he addresses in the next game.
He's already said that the combat's going to be better, so that's something.
It looked better.
If it's even a little bit better, it'll be like it's the easiest area to improve things. Like that was easily the worst part of Stardew Valley. But anyway, the hammer, it has like a slow, fat lobby attack that's kind of like the sword, but has a little bit more range. And then the right click is just like a giant AoE Unga smash around you, which I find pretty useful because if you're getting like dogpiled by enemies, you can just press like right click and then everything just gets pushed away. I got to level 100 and something in the Skeletor mines, and then I had to drink some snake milk from the blue man, which gave me more health.
The Blue Man Group.
Yeah, my cat's on the counter. God damn it. Hold on, I'll be right back.
God, you silly cat.
She heard me stand up and immediately ran out of the kitchen.
At least she knows authority.
Well, I've caught her on the counter a few times, and I like sometimes gently put her down, and other times I squirt the shit out of her with a squirrel bottle. So fucking degenerate.
Talk about the Blue Man Group.
Yeah, so I got the snake milk from the blue guy in the Skeletor mines. And then after a very long winter, I had a really hard time collecting all the hardwood I needed to fix the boat. And Miranda wouldn't tell me what was on the island. And if she had, I probably would have prioritized that over finishing the winery in the basement of my house. Like, I got to the island at, like, the very ass end of winter and was like, oh, there's a lot of things to do on here. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, why the fuck didn't you say anything? Like, it's like, well, I didn't want to spoil it. And I'm like, you could have just said there was stuff to do.
You could have just said, go here. No questions asked. No tendies.
Yeah. But yeah, I have this island now, and you, like, explore it looking for nuts, and then you give the nuts to birds, and then they do things. I've got the shack. I've started farming on the little space they give you to farm. I've been in the volcano dungeon. That place fucks you up. Holy shit, everything in there. Everything in there hits so goddamn hard. I think I need to, like, grind out the defense ring that gives you, like, +4 defense for after you kill, like, a number of crabs. Just so I can, like, not keep getting my shit kicked in every time I'm in this volcano place. Holy fuck. The whole island's a very different experience from the rest of Stardew. I think that was deliberate. Concerned Ape was kind of like, oh, I want to do something, like, very different. So instead of it being entirely focused on, like, your routine of slowly becoming more wealthy and farming and whatnot, it's like there's some of that, but it's more about, like, there's a reason for you to fish outside of just money, and there's a reason for you to explore. There's a reason for you to go in the mines, again, aside from just money, and there's, like, some light puzzle solving as well. I haven't figured all of them out yet, but there's, like, some birds I need to find in the rain. That'll make sense to anyone who's played it. But yeah, I don't know. It's very different. I don't know if I like it. I kind of play Stardew for like a very specific experience. So the fact that this whole island thing is very different. I don't know. I don't dislike it, but it's not what I play the game for, you know?
You play it to earn tons and tons of money.
Yeah, well.
I know you were telling me about with that teleport wand thing.
Oh, mostly I've just been saving up money so I can get the teleport one so I can go back home more easily. So, like, if you'd been playing it all along, you were probably, like, fuck you rich and had no use for money. So you just, like, had all of the really rich things that you had to kind of save up for. I don't. So some of the island exploration has been a little bit, let's use the word tedious. I don't have an easy way to like leave the volcano dungeon, and in the Skeletor mines or the regular mines you can just like hop on the ladder and leave. But in the volcano dungeon, you have to like actually unlock a shortcut that goes back to the entrance. So there's been a number of times where I've been just gunning it through the hallways of that fucking place, just trying to hit like the next shortcut area so I can get the fuck out. Because I don't have the return scepter, which would make, leaving very easy. Now, some people might be like, hey, why don't you have totems? And to that I would say totems cost honey, and honey's worth money, and money is being saved to get the return scepter.
Which is better than totems.
I could buy the desert totems using Omni Geodes. That is actually something that would be an economical way of doing stuff. That does introduce an extra step into getting back home, but if you leave with enough time, it's not a huge deal. You can get back and have like enough. You just like lose out on like 20 or 30 minutes of in-game time for actually exploring the volcano layer. But I guess the one thing is that based on what I'm seeing in this, I'm very interested to see how the Haunted Chocolatier turns out, because it feels like Concerned Ape was experimenting with the like gameplay loop, or like with new types of gameplay loops and new types of ideas and mechanics while messing around with this. So I could see some of the lessons maybe learned from this applied in the Haunted Chocolatier such that it would make the overall experience greater.
I could definitely see that,
given how different this is. So that is something that I am at least a little bit more curious about, because I knew that Miranda was going to play it, so I'd be like, okay, I'll ostensibly be playing this game through the fucking backseat viewing window, right? But I might actually play it now just to see like how different or whatever it is compared to Stardew. Because like my thing was, like Stardew started as a fan game of like for Harvest Moon. I wasn't entirely sure if creating another game and not a Harvest Moon style game would actually work out in any capacity. But given what I've seen here, it doesn't feel as far-fetched of an idea. Though, I guess the only kind of counterpoint I'd make to that is, from what I've seen of the Haunted Chocolatier, it seems like it is to Rune Factory what Stardew is to Harvest Moon. And like my experience with Rune Factory is somewhat limited, but the farming is very de-emphasized in those games relative to the dungeon exploration and the combat. Anyway, that's the Stardew Island stuff. I don't know if I'm going to talk about Stardew Valley again on the podcast. I guess, did I say who I married? I've married somebody in the game. I don't think I said it last time.
No.
Okay, so I did not download the mom's mod. But originally I was leaning towards Flavio.
Oh, no, you didn't go with him. Oh.
No. But Leah kept giving me like really big I want to bang vibes. So I was like, all right. Like, I know that sometimes people, like women will give men a hard time because like, oh, a woman talked to me. Clearly she's interested. It's like, no. But like the dialogue that Leah says when you get her to 8 hearts, she's like, oh man, it must be really lonely living up on that farm all by yourself. Wouldn't you like some company sometime? And I'm like, I feel like you're trying to send the signals to Fufo here. That and like I just in general feel like I warmed up to her a lot more, given that she's coded a lot older than like the overwhelming majority of the characters who are available as bachelors and bachelorettes in the Valley. So I'm like, yeah, you feel like a more age appropriate option for me right now than just about everyone else here. So I ended up going with Leah, and holy shit, her fucking 10 heart event. So I'm not a man whore, so I am in dating sim games, but in Harvest Moon style games, I don't get every character you can date up to like the maximum hearts. I only get them to like the maximum hearts before you can date them. So I've never seen the 10 heart events for the overwhelming majority of the dateable cast. So I saw that for the first time for Leah, and I laughed so fucking hard at it. I'm not gonna spoil it for like the one person who hasn't played Stardew, but I found it very amusing. And then her 14 heart event, which is new. That like 14 hearts was not a thing the last time I played. That was also pretty enjoyable. I thought that was pretty funny. That's the other thing, I guess, that just like as the last thing that kind of caps us off is that they definitely have improved the AI, air quotes, for your spouse. So they actually like wander around the house. You can talk to them a couple times in the day, and occasionally they just fucking leave the house to do their own thing, and they'll tell you they're leaving the house that day to do their own thing, or they'll like tend to the farm some days, and I'm like, that's really cool that instead of
just sitting in the kitchen all day.
Yeah, instead of just sitting in the kitchen and like not existing as an actual like person anymore once you marry them, they still kind of have their own life. Concerned Ape definitely added a ton of dialogue. Cause like obviously I've seen repeats because it doesn't take much to see repeats, but the amount of extra dialogue your spouse has when they become your spouse is crazy. They repeat their lines less than the fucking other NPCs in the towns do. So that's wild. I like that a lot. I think you can definitely see a lot of time, attention, and care went into this game, which is, nice when Harvest Moon is currently being put out by a bunch of talentless pieces of shit who are just riding off the back of the name. And I know Miranda would agree with me on this, that the original developers, they're using Stories of Seasons now as the name. They're in the same fucking boat. Like, they're just both trash fires, so at least there's one good farming sim style game. I was going to call it a Harvest Moon game. But yeah, that's the GGST and the Stardew update. I actually have something new to talk about for the next game, but I'll let you jump into which of the two games
I'll
you going to talk
go
about
with
first.
Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Spider-Man.
Better Spider-Man. Spider-Man
Fuck
with
you and the horse you rode in on, Spider-Man!
No, you.
Tell me about PS5 Spider-Man.
PS5 Spider-Man. Spider-Man should only be played in 60 frames per second is what I want to start off with. A buttery 60 frames per second, web swinging around the city. Mwah. Chef's kiss.
Every fucking action game should be played at 60 FPS, and anyone who says differently is fucking blind.
Yep. The city is nice and crisp. So when I played it, there's 3 modes for the resolution. There's the highest detailed one at 30. Boo, not going to do that. There's just the regular 60 frames per second, and then there's the 60 frames per second one for performance, and then it has the ray tracing. And the city looks much better.
I was going to say the ray tracing one probably looks the best.
Yeah, the ray tracing one looked the best.
Without sacrificing
the 30
anyway.
Yeah, the 30 frames per second one also had the ray tracing.
Ray tracing is like, computationally, it doesn't take as much effort as doing really high resolution texture mapping for like shadows and stuff.
It just looks so much more natural.
Yeah, but it does a really good job of somewhat accurately capturing the way that shadows should be and like lighting should work dynamically, and it's cheaper computation wise, so it's genuinely a really good piece of technology for rendering light and shadows in a scene that doesn't take as much as like doing it properly would, because it uses shortcuts to do it. So I'm very excited to see more games make use of it, because it's gonna be good shit.
It was interesting that the adaptive triggers, it didn't really do a whole lot with that, so it didn't really show off that functionality. The more like natural vibration thing in the controller also was kind of just really subtle. So I didn't really think this game sold those features very well.
I don't know, personal opinion, I feel like that demo thing, the Astro thingamajigger,
It will be the only one.
Yeah.
That to really showcase it.
I feel like most of their developers are either like gonna do a half-hearted attempt or just not even use this shit at all.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Controller gimmicks are almost always just controller gimmicks. I mean, like, there are a few times where, and I wrote an article about it, there are a few times where having a unique controller genuinely makes the game better, but holy shit, the PS5's controller is not one of those instances.
Yeah, I would agree. But yeah, no, this is Miles Morales' time to shine in the Spider-Man universe until what I assume will be in 1 and 2. You have to play as both of them, or maybe it'll be co-op or whatever. It's too early to tell, but you start off and you fight Rhino, who's from the previous game, so kind of reused assets, and that's going to be kind of a trend in this game.
I was going to say, hold on a second. Is this not like a expand-alone?
It is basically an expand-alone. There's a lot of stuff that's reused from the previous game.
Yeah, that's just it. Like, the whole reason that they even can do that is because they're reusing a bunch of stuff from the previous game.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why it's supposed to be like an expansion, but then we made its like own thing, expand-alone.
If this was in the season pass, or like even this was a second season pass for the Spider-Man game at like $30, that'd be a really good one. It'd be even better than what they added in The City That Never Sleeps. That was their series of 3 episodes that they released for the original Marvel Spider-Man game. This would be leagues better if that's what it came out as. But anyway, so yeah, you fight Rhino through the power of getting more powers, because that's what a video game should do. You get the ability to basically conduct electricity, which is then later called Venom power, which I feel like they're going to make so many damn jokes in the second game about that, because the villain in that game, or at least that's been shown off, is Venom. So I'm going to punch Venom with Venom.
Venom!
Yep, I could see that joke coming.
God,
That's
that fucking
that's a bad
movie.
dad joke. What, Spider-Man 3?
No, the fucking like Venom standalone thing. That's what I was referencing by doing
I keep
Venom!
forgetting that exists.
Like the fucking song that they did for Venom, I'm gonna get him! It's so dumb.
I keep forgetting that those movies exist.
You have to listen to the Venom theme on YouTube. It's a treat. It's a fucking wild ride.
Oh dear.
It's so bad.
I will add it to the ever-growing list of things to do in my life. But anyway, yeah, so I'd say the main story is good enough. It does come in at around, I'd say like the 6 to 8 hour mark, which I think that's actually the perfect run for this type of a game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like a 1 or 2 day kind of game, and you're good.
Sit down, you swing around New York, and then you're done.
Yep, there are collectibles and stuff like that, and some side stuff that you can do. It's far toned down from the original Spider-Man game, so there's way less bloat, in my opinion, so I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I think this is a much better condensed version of what is Spider-Man. And Miles Morales has better powers because he has the electricity. He can go invisible. So there's a lot more emphasis on the stealth element. And if you fuck up in the middle of a stealth run, you can just go invisible and just go to the ceiling. And then they'll be like, what? Where'd he go? They counter that with technology, but whatever.
Fucking technology.
It's used very sparingly, so it's almost kind of like a non-issue. I think it's like in 1 level.
So the vibes I'm getting from this is that this is the 2018 Spider-Man game, but instead of being an open world game for no discernible reason, it's just like a 8-hour, really tightly well-scripted action game.
In that regard, yes. There's some bloat with the side missions, but like you can just do a couple of those in between the story. And by the end, I think I was at like 70% complete or maybe 80% complete. And I was only kind of just going to things along the way, picking the collectibles up. They'd show up on the map and I'd be like, well, I'm going in that direction for the mission. I will say there's some weird design choices, though, for some of the stuff. Like New Game Plus. It doesn't make sense. You get skill points, which those don't really make sense in the grand scheme of things.
I have a fucking bone to pick with skill trees inside of modern
this
video
skill
games,
tree
but
is not a very good one. You have like 2 choices between like the level you're at, and then as the more levels you unlock over time with the experience, which mostly comes from main missions, you have very little choice. So you're really just building this tree out, just picking what you can at the time. It's kind of a little baffling. I don't think the same problem was in the first game. I think there was a bit more like variety that you could pick which skills you wanted, and so I just don't understand that decision.
So like, I don't know when exactly this shit show started, but at some point developers stopped using skill trees as skill trees and they started using them as progression trees. You know how like in a normal game you use an ability and then eventually the game gives you a new ability and then you start using that ability and then it gives you a new ability after a little bit more time and then you start using that ability?
This game does that as well. All the Venom powers, for the most part, are unlocked through the main story.
Okay, so like at some point they just like stopped doing that for
Like
combat related stuff, and instead they just relegated all of that shit into a skill tree.
Well, I
so
think
you
that's
can
to
choose
make
it
you
and
feel
unlock
more
it at
powerful
some
over time.
Yeah, but you could still just dole out those power ups at specific intervals instead of making I don't know. I feel like the skill trees are just like completely unnecessary ways of abstracting this stuff. The whole idea is that like if you have a progression loop, then people will be more invested in whatever it is that they've unlocked instead of just, oh, hey, you get this now. But I despise that shit, so personal bugaboo.
It's interesting because there's the skill points, but then there's also a portion of the skills that are regulated to training with the Peter Parker Spider-Man hologram while he's on vacation.
What the fuck?
That's how Miles Morales has the reins of the city for a week or two. But those trainings, you complete those trainings, and then Pete teaches you, hey, remember, if you time this really well, you can do a huge jump, or stun the enemy with your web when you dodge at a perfect time who's like a gunner, and you can do a one-hit KO. Here's how it kind of works. And so he kind of teaches you that. So I like that idea, because that kind of makes sense. Like, Miles is learning new stuff from the old previous Spider-Man. So of course there's going to be stuff that Peter Parker knows over Miles.
Yeah, because he's got experience, right?
That makes a lot of sense how those skills unlock, but the skill tree is just like, okay, sure.
It's just there because every game needs to have a fucking skill tree.
Progression. And the weirdest part about it is, by the time you get to level 24 in New Game Plus, because first playthrough, you can get to level 20, and then you can apparently get to level 30, but then they give you more skill points than there are skills to learn. And I was really confused why I was unlocking skill points when I had unlocked all the skills. I'm baffled by that decision. Like, what's the point? You know I'm done the skill tree. You guys designed this game.
Yeah, I've only ever seen
Very
that
weird.
happen in one game before. It was like a free-to-play MMO, the Maple Story.
Of course.
Well, but it's like, that's a game that's constantly updating. So the reason that certain classes didn't have skills for their skill points was one or more of their older skills was removed and they hadn't been replaced with anything, because a bigger update that was going to like completely change how their skills even worked was coming. So it's like, okay, there's no point in coming up with some interim fix. Like, we have a much bigger idea of all the changes we want to do. It's just, it's going to take us longer to develop all of those changes. So
as far as I know, this game's not going to get that big of a change. I think
No.
the biggest change was that 60 FPS ray tracing mode. That was the big one that they added in post-launch.
well, that's something I'd find more acceptable in a game that's like, evolving over time versus this.
This is not evolving.
Yeah, no, this should just have fucking been designed properly. That's super weird.
Yeah, that part is really weird. The overall gameplay is really good. The loop with Miles, the powers that he gets over time is well dished out. It's usually about, like, I'd say every 2 or 3 missions or so, at the very least, you get some sort of new power.
So is that like every 30 to 40 minutes?
Maybe like every hour to hour and a half.
Oh,
maybe.
okay.
Not about an hour, I'd say. Depends on how much side content you're doing in between those things. Cause
Gotcha.
he's got a variety of suits that he has in his arsenal.
Doesn't one of them make the whole game run at like 30 FPS or some shit? It's like a comic book looking suit or something? Or maybe that was in the original one. I can't remember.
There's an animated one. There's other costumes as well. There's like a Spider-Man, like the multiverse Spider-Man movie one.
I think that's
Into
the one I'm
Spider-Verse.
thinking of. And it looks like it's animating at like somewhere between like 24 and 30 FPS, even though the game's still rendering at 60, which always looks fucking weird.
There's some mods that you can add into the suit that adds like bam, kapow, that kind of silly stuff when you're punching the enemies. I thought that was really
That's fun.
fun. Yeah, exactly. There's a cat in the backpack.
Cat back.
Spider-Man suit. In his special, when he uses his finisher, the cat comes out of the backpack and scratches the opponent.
That's awesome.
It is really humorous.
Chives, attack!
Pretty much. Not every suit has, or as far as I could tell, not every suit has its own unique finisher. That'd be cool if it did, but
Not all suits are created equally then.
no. Some are very similar to others. I know I'm probably pissing off comic book fans. I'm sorry.
Oh, who the fuck cares
One
what
of
those sweaty neckbeards think? I'm not apologizing. Fuck you people.
Oh boy. The other thing that I just found very weird is New Game Plus is like, I'm trying to skip cutscenes. I'm trying to just get to like combat. There's just some weird times where it definitely feels like it's a really long cutscene, and I just have no means of skipping it. It's very arbitrary when a cutscene is skippable versus when it's not skippable. And I don't understand why.
Maybe just stupid. Never underestimate stupid.
But, yeah, I know. There'll be times where part of the scene will be skippable, and then you get to the other part, and then it'll be like, no, you have to watch this. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. There's a whole part where Miles is a bit mopey, and then they make his, like, black and red suit, the iconic one from the Into the Spider-Verse one.
Oh, yeah.
That's not skippable, even though it's like kind of a pseudo training building the suit montage. And I'm like, don't need to watch this again. I already have the suit unlocked in New Game Plus. I like to skip this. No, it's just not skippable.
That's very strange.
It's very, very weird. New Game Plus is kind of breaking some of the positives I had about the game, which is unfortunate. That's not what you want to do in a New Game Plus. In a New Game Plus, you really want to be like, yeah, this was a really good game.
Fucking side tangent for a second. Why does this game have a New Game Plus? That's something I associate with, like, RPGs.
I don't know.
What's, like, different about... Like, it's an RPG, right? You go back through the game, you're like, aha, I'm all leveled up now. I'm gonna kick the game's ass.
Redo the story missions, even though there is a replay in the previous one.
See, but, like...
There is an extra difficulty that's unlocked after you finish it.
I was gonna say, usually, the difficulty curve is, like, completely broken, so if I just want to play through the game again, I just fucking restart the game and play through it again. Like, I don't know. That's the kind of person I am. I want to just kick the game's ass, like...
You can crank it up one more notch than what's provided at the beginning.
Okay.
It does have an interesting accessibility almost kind of mode where you'll still take like the same damage as like the second lowest difficulty, but Miles will never be knocked out. You'll never see like the lose screen unless it's the bomb blew up or something like that. Something that's completely unavoidable. He'll never be knocked down, so it's almost kind of like a pseudo-god mode.
Okay, so like the only fail states are when like a story-related thing is failed. Like, okay, you have 5 minutes to like defuse a bomb and you don't do it. It's like, okay, well,
yeah.
Obviously we gotta restart the mission now, but...
You at that point, you gotta have the fail condition.
Yeah. So like, okay, we gotta restart now, but like, other than that, you can't fail.
Yep.
Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting for accessibility. It's just a almost easy mode. But yeah, really great game. Definitely looks a heck of a lot better than Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4. It is weird because this is a different Peter Parker than what was on the PS4. So you see him take off the mask and you're like, that's not the right Peter Parker in this series. And it was because of contract disputes.
Yeah. Did they make him look more like Tom Holland in this?
He looks younger.
That's how I would describe the way Tom Holland looks, but
yeah,
I'm like significantly older than he is. I guess both of us are.
Yeah, so it's a little jarring, but his face isn't in the game a whole lot, obviously, because
he's on vacation. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm not that much older than Tom Holland. He just has a very young looking face.
I mean, Jane Jonah Jameson is definitely an Alex Jones in that world. It is. They don't even try and sugarcoat it.
Yeah, but that's like the best way to bring in that character, right? Like,
yeah, he's got like a radio thing.
Yeah, well, it's like obviously back.
Yeah.
That character's had to evolve with the times, right? The way that they envisioned what things would look like now is not necessarily how things looked now. So they've had to change it. So instead of it being like, oh yeah, this is a guy who has like a lot of influence in the radio, it's like, okay, no, instead he's got a podcast that he puts out, and he also puts out like a web series, and it's really popular, and that's what people are like watching, and that's where all like these crazy ass conspiracy theories and shit come from.
Mm-hmm.
And like the best model for that is Alex Jones, because that's Alex Jones, like that's what he does.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I'll probably say on Miles Morales.
So that's a thumbs up.
Good game.
Yeah, good
Better
game.
Spider-Man as far as I'm concerned.
Oh shit, okay. That's pretty high praise. Because a lot of people really like... I don't know how you felt about regular Spider-Man, because
It's just the extra powers.
Yeah.
He's got a better arsenal of stuff. Even my wife was just like, so yeah, this is a better Spider-Man.
She's not even fucking playing the game. She's just watching you play it.
Yeah. She's just like, well, he's got electricity powers. He can go invisible. And I'm like, he's got like all the powers of regular-ass Spider-Man. Just a few less gadgets, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, Disgaea 2.
Yeah, so... Fucking Lord. Did I ever talk about Disgaea on the podcast? I feel like I must have.
One you did, yeah. The one that has... You can't heal to gain XP.
Yeah, so obviously I played Disgaea earlier in the year. Whilst doing that, I looked online and found out that Disgaea 2 actually includes a number of quality of life features that are not in the first game, obviously. And so I was like, okay, well, I enjoyed one, like, alright. It's got some rough edges. So I was like, let's try out number 2 in my continued Disgaea experiment, thanks to reading a couple of articles that AK from Everything is Bad For You wrote about the series. And I will say that 2 does fix up like a lot of I guess not like a lot, but it like fixes up the few like main issues I had with the first game. The fact that your healer is just like impossible to level up is one of them. My healers are like the strongest ass fucking people in my party. It's crazy. They just sit in the back line just casting buffs and healing. That's the other thing. They have like way more buffs in this game than they had in the previous game. So it's like, oh, am I healing on this turn? No. Well, what spell can I use? So like they have a thing that increases defense. They have a thing that increases, I'll just call it special defense. I think it's resistance.
Sure.
Magic defense.
Yeah.
And then there's like one that increases the attacking power of whoever the recipient is. The more you use a spell, the stronger it gets. Instead of making the actual spells do more like damage, you use them a certain number of times and then the casting arc changes. If it's like a magic spell, an attack that actually makes contact, then it becomes more powerful the more you use it. So like the first level of any spell will only hit 1 square, and then when you get it to level 2, it'll hit 2 squares that are kitty cornered to each other on the grid, and then it'll hit 3 squares in a line, and then it'll do 4 squares in a big cube, and then it'll do 5 squares in a cross pattern. I don't really know what comes after the cross pattern because that's usually as far as I get with most of the spells, but fundamentally the more often you use something, the more utility it has. Obviously, the attacking spells are the easiest to level up on the various different mage characters, and then like the healing is the easiest to level up on like the clerics. But it's pretty cool when you use the buffs or the debuffs enough times that you can actually cast them on multiple enemies or multiple party members at the same time.
That's a neat way of handling
yeah, well, it's like
it up.
It's kind of like I don't mind this sort of a system as much, but it's kind of like, oh, the more you use it, the better you get at doing it, right?
Yeah, instead of it being it's essentially more powerful because its range increases, but it's not like the buff is stronger. Or does that also?
So I guess the big thing is that like when you cast it on more spaces, it costs more mana. So like when you cast it on the one, I don't know what the actual values are, but like say for example you use a heal. The first level heal only hits the one spot, so it costs like 15 mana to use. If you're using the 2 spot one, that costs like 30 mana to use, and then the 3 spot one would be like 45 mana to use. So like it does cost more mana to use it, but like if you can line up your party in a very advantageous way, instead of taking 3 turns to heal everyone, you can heal like everyone in the 1 turn. Or like if you line up a bunch of the enemies, because you can pick up and throw your people or the enemy people or whatever. So you can actually like position the enemies such that you can, oh, we got them in a cross pattern. Let's unleash a devastating fire spell on them now that they're all in the giant cross pattern. It just makes your spell casting a lot more economical, which plays into like kind of a big part of why I actually like Disgaea. The combat in this game is generally pretty good. I'm not going to say it's like super duper strategic in as far as like, oh man, I have to make like all of the right decisions or my units are going to die. Like Fire Emblem, where I feel like that game very often threads the needle. Is that the right word? Threads the needle?
Yeah.
Between life and death with your characters by just having the occasional random bullshit crit, or like somebody who has a critical advantage against one of your units just pops out of fucking nowhere.
He came from the hills. No, my party's over there.
I feel like every time somebody dies in Disgaea, I'm always like, okay, I saw that coming, and somebody, I just like, whatever.
But they're not gone permanently, though.
No, they're not gone permanently. They're just gone for like the rest of that fight. Or if you're in a dungeon, they're gone until you leave the dungeon. And then like just with how you're able to like control your own positioning by doing like these crazy throwing combos where you like stack a bunch of dudes on top of each other, chain throw them across the map, so you can actually like move across the map like significant distances across the map in a single turn, which can make exploring dungeons very, very, very easy. You'll spawn in, you'll see the exit, and you can just make like this giant clown tower and just throw your way to the exit and then go to the next floor, and you just do that repeatedly.
And only one of your characters has to get there?
Yeah, only one of your characters has to get through for the entire party to go.
Teleport with them.
Yeah. I think that's pretty funny, because you can like, the only time you do that is when you're in like item dungeons, So like, I guess one of the main mechanics of Disgaea is that you can level up any item because any item's a dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
So you go into the item, and then proportional to its rarity and its like, which is like a hidden, or like rarity, and then it's like strength stat, which is like a hidden modifier that determines like the relative strength of the item compared to other items. The dungeon will start off with like enemies at level whatever is appropriate for that strength modifier. And then the further into the dungeon you get, the stronger they get. But as you do that, you actually level up the item significantly, and as you do that, it increases its stats. So, like, you can buy a bunch of bullshit gear and then just go through, like, 30 or 40 levels in the item dungeon and then improve that gear to be, like, better than a later piece of equipment that you could buy.
Yeah, I know last time when you're playing 1, you didn't really interact with the item dungeon regularly. Did that change this time?
I'm about halfway through the story, and I have not been using the item dungeons a whole lot yet, but I think I'm getting to a point where I should start to invest in it a bit.
Okay.
Generally like that aspect of the game. It's just I picked it up again after not having played it for a while, and I was like, alright, what the fuck's going on? I also, against maybe my better judgment, have also shrunk down the amount of party members I'm focusing on, specifically because I find grinding out all of the gear for a lot of party members is super annoying. So I'm like, what if I just had like 6 party members that I kind of cared about and just leveled up and yeah, just like have like a couple of people who can kind of carry the. So I've got like the main character who's obviously going to be overpowered anyway. The main female character, again, obviously going to be overpowered. And then like a healer, an attacking healer hybrid, a mage, and then another frontline attacking. So like the guy hero is a frontliner type person. So I have like another frontliner, and then the female hero is like a backline person. She's more like more like a spellcaster. She's not actually a spellcaster, but she's like that kind of a role where she can't really take too many hits, but she can do a lot of damage from ranged. The other thing that I really like with Disgaea isn't just that you can kind of control your position of your dudes and like the enemy's position by picking them up and whipping them around and stuff. It's just the other thing that's really cool is that like none of the attacks, or like the special attacks, have identical ranges. So every single special attack in the game has a use because it hits like different hit zones. If you have a sword, the first special move on the sword is Blade Charge, and that will cause you to charge through the 3 spaces in front of you. The amount of space you need to use the move is like you gotta have 1, 2, 3 spaces in front of you that enemies can optionally be filled in with. Obviously, the more of them that are there, the better, because the attack is gonna hit more people if there's 3 of them lined up there, right? And then the space behind them needs to be free as well. So you need to have 4 spaces in front of you to use this attack. No other attack that sword wielders get has that exact same range. That's the only attack that does that, which I really like because it means that instead of like what I find in a lot of this guy's a Japanese game, so I'll pick on JRPGs here. I find a lot of JRPGs.
You get a skill and then
you just get like
you get a better skill. And
you get the better version of it, and you never. Yeah, exactly. So like with this, it's like every time you get a new skill, there's actually a reason to still use the older skills because the older skills have completely different ranges. In this particular scenario, this particular skill is the best one to use because it hits these 2 targets and I have the room to use it where I can't use this other maybe more powerful skill because, it might be a little more powerful, but like it's going to cost me 4 times as much mana and half of its hit zone is wasted. It makes it feel like you're actually having to think about what you're doing instead of just like, mashing your way through combat like a brainless baboon. And then there's the whole like system for the way that classes work. So like you recruit new party members through like a mentor-mentee system, and mentors can learn skills from their mentees. So if you want to get a particular skill onto a character, you can figure out which class gives that skill and then go to that character that you want to get that skill on, have them have a mentee who is that class, level that class up, get the skill, and then have them fight beside each other in combat, and then that way the mentor can learn the skill off of the mentee and then they'll permanently have it unlocked.
Oh, so you can make some interesting combinations.
Yeah, you can make some absolutely broken ass shit doing that. Just as an example, in the previous game, because I was having such a hard time with the healers, Edna, she was the mentor for my best healer. once I found out about that, I made it so that Etna just got like all of the healing skills from the healer, and then she became my healer for the entire game because I'm like, fuck this, I can't deal with the fact that these healers don't get EXP from healing stuff, which is what they're going to be doing more than half the time because they just have like dog shit attack. There's no reason to not just cast spells with them that do buffs and heals and shit the entire time. So the other thing is that with the class system is that as you level up a particular class, and like if you level it up enough times, it'll unlock like secondary and tertiary version of that class, which has higher base stats. So then you can go, and if you've killed enough enemies with that particular character, so you have like enough mana saved up on them, I don't know what the term is, but you like re-roll them, and then you can bump them up to being the next class, but they start at level 1 when you do that. But I already did that with my frontline warrior guy, so he was like the basic bitch warrior, and then I unlocked the next tier of warrior class, so I re-rolled him as the next tier of warrior class, and then I grinded him up a little bit, and I think I have the third class. I just don't think he's got enough mana to level up again, but like once he does, I'm probably just gonna re-roll him as that, so he's like even higher base stats. And it's like one of those things where it's like, you probably don't need to do any of this shit to actually like finish the main game story. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's actually worth doing the upgrades because like they're like the stats will go up by like 20%. And it's like one of those things where at first you're like at low levels, you're like, oh, this character's only got like 2 or 3 more base stat points. Big deal. But then it's like the big difference happens in the long run. So it's like, oh, when they get to like level 20, there might be like a 50-point difference between the two of them, which is very large. I know Disgaea is like a game that has like really huge numbers, but it like the difference is unquantifiably large between each of the different class increments. It's very much worth your time to continually upgrade the classes to the higher rungs and the class tier. I think they also unlock like extra skills when they're at higher tiers, but I'm not 100% sure if that's true. I think it might be more true for like the mages. I don't know if the hand-to-hand combat classes really do that. I think they just get better at wielding their weapons and slash or have higher stats instead of having like new skills. But yeah, I don't know. It's a fun-ass game. There's like a lot of mechanics and things that it does that I like a lot about the game mechanically. The one thing that's kind of a bit of a letdown is I find that the writing's not the greatest.
I was gonna ask you, is this better writing than the last
So
one?
the first one's like very self-aware, and I would say that this one's also very self-aware. I just find the overall story and the characters a little bit less likable. In the first game, the main character is like, haha, I'm going to be the demon lord. I'm going to be just a big old piece of shit. It's through like his friends that he realizes that being a selfish asshole is not necessarily the best path forward in life. And that's kind of like the main plot of the game. Some people might have like a more nuanced breakdown, but I feel like it's kind of a story about like learning to be less selfish. This one, so far, is daddy issues. That's the whole game. The game's daddy issues.
Okay.
The main character has some like abandonment, parental problem stuff, and the female main character has some huge daddy issues. I don't know.
You can't relate.
I found a plot about like learning to be a less selfish piece of shit. That's like a very general, it's like a very human thing because we all start off as selfish little bastards when we're young. And as we get older, we have to think about how other people think and feel. And, we have to develop empathy. So a story about becoming less selfish and like maturing, that's a very relatable, it's a very human story. I don't find a story about abandonment or parental issues as necessary. Like for me, it's not as relatable. So I'm not necessarily enjoying it as much. I have my issues with my parents, but they don't stem from, like, abandonment, so...
Oh, dear.
But yeah, so, like, in general, I'm not jiving as well with the story. I do like the fourth wall breaks. The game is just as loose with the fourth wall as it was in the first. There's also a horny French frog who is a coward, and that makes me laugh every single time he talks. I'm not actively using him in my party, but he's in the story still quite a bit, and every time he fucking talks, his voice lines are always delivered in this faux French accent. And it's the kind of accent that, like, somebody who's making fun of French people would make, rather than, like, a legitimate French accent. It's very funny. I love every time he talks.
Of course you do.
He does, like, this, like, he does, like, that kind of a laugh. And I'm like, no one ever seriously does that. Like, that's not something you do as, like...
in movies and media.
Yeah, it's only something you do when you're making fun of French people. That's not something you do when you're seriously trying to, like, oh, this character is French.
in Soviet Russia.
Exactly, and that's like the Russian version of that. Like everyone like uses broken English, talks about fucking like bears and shit. That's like the Russian version of that.
We go to woods and go get bear.
That character is pretty funny. I'll give it up for Tink. Tink is fucking hilarious. But like in general, not jiving as much with the overall themes of the story. That and like just generally where I looked at the number of chapters in the game. It's 13 chapters. I'm on chapter 7, and it feels like the story hasn't progressed a whole lot in any meaningful way. That's a little bit frustrating. I felt like the first game had a little bit more momentum toward the overarching plot throughout the different chapters, where this one feels like it's mostly been spinning its wheels for the first half of the game, which is a little bit frustrating. I don't know. Mechanically, it's still fun, so that's, good game. Or good enough game. Speaking of Japanese games, let's get into Yeast.
It does have one of the weirdest names, though. It is YS. From all the YouTube videos I could tell, it's Ys. So, it's Ys VIII, Lacrimosa of Donna. This is probably one of the better games I played all year. I will say that. The developer is Nihon Falcom, and they're one of my favorite JRPG, or they're just one of my favorite developers in general. So this continues off with the main protagonist of this series, Adol. He's on a boat that goes a little bit too close to an...
I'm on a boat. Take a good hard look at this motherfucking boat.
I forgot that song existed.
Ah.
But then,
oh man!
But then, unfortunately, Pirates of the Caribbean comes in and krakens your ass, and you're then stranded on this island that you know nothing about. It's an island that no one goes to because it's known for its ships disappearing in the area, and now you know why, because there's a fucking kraken.
It's the Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm. So you don't know anything about this island, so there's a great sense of exploration as you're learning about this island that no one knows about. You build up this camp, you find survivors on the boat that you were on, which is interesting because you don't really realize that the people that are on the boat are going to be the people that you're going to interact with, because the story's like, oh, you're just going from one port to another. So you're not really thinking about that. So then you're kind of interacting very briefly with all these characters. Interesting to see, ooh, what survivor am I going to find that was on the ship at the time and I didn't realize would be one of the characters. So
you got to meet all of your party members, but you don't know when you're going to unlock.
You got to meet most of your party members on the boat, and then some of the extra village or castaway kind of people who all have, for the most part, their own responsibilities and things that they bring to the table. One of those being, oh, you found the medic. Now he'll brew you some potions that you can use to, not die on the island.
Here is some drugs. You can take them to heal.
Yes. It's interesting because there's no money in this game, so it's all about the resources that you get from the animals, and then you're trading it for whatever services you need.
Okay, so society does not exist on this island.
Society does not exist on this island. Money is
I need this. I'll give you this in exchange for this thing that I need. Okay, I can go get you that thing.
Yeah, the potion needs some monster fluid or something like that, and then something else. Or whatever is necessary in order to make the potion, for example.
Neat.
Eventually you'll get a character that will run the market. She's like, oh, I'm so big into getting money, and then she's so sad when she's like, there's no point in money on this island, is there? I can't price gouge you.
This bitch is going to introduce the seashell system.
She doesn't. But she does introduce an interesting system, which is trading up and trading down for resources. So if it's a resource that's a little bit too hard to get, then it's for 4 of these and 2 of these, I'll give you 1 of these. Or you can trade down, oh, I have so many of these resources, but I don't have the lesser one at this time. Then get a bunch of those resources.
Genuine smart system to put into a game where it's entirely resource based. Mm-hmm. Especially if you've got to do random drops to get all those resources. That's a very, very smart solution to making that entire system not become a frustrating, grindy bullshit fest.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a beastery that you unlock for every monster that you kill, so you can easily look up which materials are from which monster. You don't have to have gotten that resource from the monster in order to know that that's what they have on hand.
Also very smart.
Yep, very smart decision. They've got a lot of accessories. Some are more useful than others. Some are like, oh, cut down the SP usage, which is like the special like points that you build up by a third, half, 2/3 over time, which is pretty damn significant. Some that add like poison to your attack so that you build up like poison. Something I know that you've always mentioned before is the fact that, oh, the boss is immune to poison or something like that. In this game, I don't think any of the bosses, for the most part, were really immune to anything. So I could poison them. It wouldn't do, like, an insane amount of damage.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's not supposed to.
Away. So,
yeah, it's just supposed to do additional...
It does, yeah, some additional damage. And then, like, you can dodge over time.
Yeah.
The game is not afraid to punch back at the player. If you make some bad choices, then you're gonna get punished. It is like so. It's a completely action oriented.
That was going to be a question that I asked, if it was turn based or if it was action.
No turn based. The only part where the game pauses is when you'll be able to like select a potion to use on a party member. Which the potions are like, heal 60%, heal 100%. So the game's like, yeah, no, we're gonna hit you hard right off the bat.
Live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah, you get 6 party members over the course of your adventure. You've got 3 different classes, which is one that's like the slash, which is kind of the sword one that's almost kind of like a blast class, so like your hammer or something like that, and then another one that's more precision based. So some enemies have different natural weaknesses against that. So like the crabs, you'll want to use blast damage. The killer bees, that would make everyone in this world fucking scared as hell. The precision one and the sword one, I don't really understand that 100% why you can deal more damage to them, but whatever. But fortunately, each of those character classes feels completely unique. For the precision one, one's like a fencer almost, and then the other one's got a gun.
What the hell?
As you were saying earlier, for the most part, they have like 12 special skills each, I think, or roughly that, and each one feels unique. Each one can be used. Like, there's sometimes where I was using, like, low-end skills against the enemies because overall their SP usage was lower, so you could, like, spam them a little bit more frequently.
It's actually a reason to make tactical decisions.
Yes.
Wow, who would have thought that makes the game's combat system more enjoyable? Actually having to think.
I mean, there are sometimes that there are some moves that are just vastly superior to others, but they cost a significant amount more, so you're gonna have to charge that by attacking the enemy over time. And because it's action oriented, there's 2 ways to deal with attacks. You can dodge 100% of the way, and if you dodge right at the last second, you'll be immune to attacks. You'll be super fast, like way faster than the enemy. Like, the enemy almost kind of goes into slow-mo mode, and you can just attack quite a bit. Or you can block right at the last second, and you'll get a damage boost, and you'll be immune to it. Immune to attacks as well, but the enemy won't be slowed down.
For that first one, I'm picturing like Zelda Breath of the Wild when you actually get the dodge timing for the flurry attack.
I don't know, but maybe kind of like that.
Oh, that's right. You didn't actually finish that one. Never mind.
That's okay.
So is there like a reason to take the block over the immediate damage from the dodge? Like, does the buff from the block last for a significant amount of time to where you could actually do more damage with it if you pulled the block off properly?
That's tough to say. For the most part, once I learned I was doing the kind of the shield block one, I was doing that more frequently. So I think the damage in general is about the same, because you can definitely get way more hits in when you're going like super fast. Like, even your attack speed is up. So like the enemy's slower, the attack speed is up. So you don't have to worry about any more incoming attacks. Like, so after your shield is essentially like gone. Because that bar lasts, maybe that bar lasts for like maybe 2 to 3 seconds.
Like, use Roman cancel his ass.
Yeah.
I've not talked about Roman cancels I think at all, but it's like a thing from Guilty Gear.
I know. It's a well thought out game. There's like one part that really is kind of not the best about it, which everyone, from what I've read on reviews and stuff like that, everyone kind of agrees. These raid battle things where you have to like defend a point, they're kind of eh. That's kind of one of the weaker parts of the game. And I'd say, for the most part, most of the characters get their time to shine, but definitely the character that stands out is Donna.
The one that's in the title?
One in the title, yeah. And I really can't talk about her because that would be spoiler heavy.
Well.
But she is best waifu in that game, so okay.
Oh, so I got fucking Ys VIII Donna. I mean, visually, I'm going to say that is definitely a contender for a good waifu. She's dual-wielding sabers?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? And she's wearing a training bra with underboob, and that is her armor. And a bikini bottom. Japanese people never change.
There is a story reason for that.
Oh, I'm sure there is, and I'm sure it's not asinine at all. That was sarcasm. I do not believe you if you think it. Is it actually a good reason? Or is this some she breathes through her skin level shit? Alright. Jason definitely edited that out because that's a spoiler, and I don't think the reason's very good, but that's neither here nor there. You can look it up if you've played the game. Comment on the podcast. Tell me I'm wrong. I invite you. I don't give a shit.
I might mention something else about it on the next episode, but we are kind of running on time. So, with that said, thank you all very much for joining us this episode of the Frosty Canucks. You can listen to this podcast on Anchor, Stitcher, Apple, YouTube, and Spotify.
Spoofy.
You can follow the podcast at the Frosty Canucks on Twitter. You can follow myself at Javim Animation. That's JAVM Animation. Haven't really been posting. I'm moving. So, yeah. And Steve, your stuff.
You can find my blogging related stuff at frostylate.ca. That is what I spend the most time on when I am, I guess, not really working or playing games. I've got some articles coming in the pipeline. That sounds gross. I've got some articles coming out in the future. I'm just working on some English related stuff with a friend who is willing to spend time with me to help me improve at some aspects that I feel are kind of weak in my writing. Other than that, if you like art, you can follow my Instagram at FrostyLight. Haven't really posted a whole lot of stuff there, although I did finish the commission work I was working on, so I could actually do some artwork that could go up on social media now. And at FrostyLight on Twitter, everything that goes on everything is there. Although I have been checking Twitter deliberately less frequently as of late, as part of a thing from a video that I watched about dopamine detoxing. Because I was checking Twitter too often, like to the point where it was interfering with my ability to get stuff done. So I've just not been checking it at all instead now.
Huzzah.
I may or may not have videos for Chives on there eventually, because I am getting dangerously close to teaching her how to do her first trick. So that's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, teaching her how to shake paws. I've been at it for a little over a week, and she's very close to doing it correctly most of the time. I just haven't figured out how to get her to do it without food in my hand.
Baby steps.
Yeah, I mean, she's already doing better than I thought she was going to do. So yeah, there might be some cat videos on there. Although I can't promise the quality. I did take a video with my phone earlier and saw what it looked like on my desktop, and it looks like ass. So
that's because it's a phone from 1942.
Yeah, I have a dog shit phone. Yeah, so that's our blog, frostylite.ca, Twitter at frostylite, Instagram at frostylite. Go follow the shit.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us, and stay frosty.